This is a video of the 2024 Skyranger Nynja, and I'm doing a review. Basically, the airplane is half done. So here we go, talking about some of the changes that have occurred to the aircraft. All right, the aircraft is a two-seat side-by-side high-wing tricycle gear airplane. The wings are fabric covered. In this case, the Nynja, the fuselage, the empennage is covered with fiberglass, and that's one of the big upgrades for the airplane. The tail remains, the tail ailerons, flaps, that remains fabric covered. So the big change that happened, Skyranger is in the US, we just got a new dealer, and so these planes became available. Prior to that, we just had early versions of the Skyranger from the early 2000s. Since then, there have been 4 generations of improvements that have been implemented. So I'm going to talk about some of those improvements compared to the original Skyranger Classic and some of those early Skyrangers that were in the US. So right off the bat, what's happened is they've done a lot of wind tunnel testing, and you can see here the nose cone is narrower. It comes at a bigger angle. The verticals here and the verticals on the cabin, they're the same. That structure is all virtually the same. What's happened is they've just squeezed the nose down horizontally and vertically. If you look at it, the nose goes lower and the lower part of the cowling is higher. So it's just a much smoother, just less drag, which will give you more speed. Again, the Nynja, with these improvements, they've gone to 600 kilograms, which is the 1320 light sport pounds max takeoff weight. The VNE for this went to 152 from the VNE of 125 for the Classic. So it's a big change. The maneuvering speed went from 84 on the original or the Classic to 104 miles per hour for maneuvering speed. We'll talk about other improvements that have been made, but basically the cowling, the downside of the cowling being so small that the exhaust pipes are really quite close to the fiberglass. So it's going to necessitate putting some kind of a liner in there to protect the cowling from the heat generated by the exhaust. That's a minor thing. It's just a much smoother, much more aerodynamic. You can tell that they've done some wind tunnel testing or at least some models of this to improve that. One of the things that hasn't changed is the wing. The wing is shortened, but the chord and the dimension and the structure of the wing is built, those are staying the same, which means it was a really nice flying airplane. It remains, I haven't flown it, but it should be a really nice flying airplane. The improvement that they made were the cables. This is a cable brace, so there's an X going across this wing, internally cable braced. Those cables are massive. They look about twice as big as the old ones, so I think you get a lot more strength there. The other improvement that occurred is actually this little tube right here. This little tube holds this structure in place better, so it doesn't twist and move under higher speeds. Everything else stayed the same as far as I can tell. These are the same structure, the same size of structure parts, control parts. Yeah, the elevators and the rudders, the ailerons, they're all the same. Obviously, the aileron is a little bit shorter because we're talking about a shorter wing. It's about 1.5 feet shorter on both ends. They also the Nynja comes standard with this wingtip, which is supposed to reduce wingtip vortices and reduce drag. You can get them in a lot of different colors. Obviously, these are Dacron, or you can get XLAM. XLAM is their more expensive option. but it doesn't require coating. It is a UV stable. This will require some sort of coating to be UV stable, which I do with house paint. House paint has a lot of UV blocking capability, so we'll do that again. Everything else stayed the same. It's got airfoil jury struts, which aren't on there obviously yet. So that's where we are with that. So next we're going to talk about the inside the cabin. This Firewall is a much improved version of the Firewall on the earlier. This is all pre-drilled. The holes are there. It's a nice stainless steel. It seems to be quite thick. It's difficult to cut, and it's a challenge to drill through, but it's really well built. And the design of where it comes through, where it hooks up on the side, has changed a little bit. It's just a much more logical way. It still allows you pretty good access to the engine. The instrument panel will come out to about here. It's actually right behind this brake. So it'll be a helicopter type. So it'll be centered, and you'll have a little storage space over here, storage space on the other side. The Skyranger, what didn't change was the nose gear and the suspension of the nose gear. This is the same kind of rubber donuts that are used in the Mooney. It is a fully steerable nose wheel, which is kind of nice. A lot of improvements in the hardware of this steering mechanism, how that works. It's really nicely done. It simplifies things for the builder. They do, I don't know if this is an upgrade or not, but they have rudder stops now. I think what happened, that's what these cables are here. It prevents the rudder from going too far. I think what happened was somebody jammed it too hard and ended up wrecking the rudder or the tail, something. And they said, okay, we'll put a rudder stops in for you. The stick is now steel. It used to be aluminum. They've upgraded the master brake cylinder and the brakes, the calipers on the brakes. They are much improved over the original ones that came in with the original kit, the original classic Skyranger. There's the changes. There's a battery indentation, a little holder for the battery so it doesn't stick up quite a much. I thought it was very, very convenient to have the battery right there. It's really accessible in case you need to jump. They are now supplying fire-resistant paint. So the insides of these cowlings, I also bought some extra because I wanted to do more than just the fiberglass cowlings. I did these cowlings here and this cowling underneath here. Just mixed it up. It according to the ASTM standards, it won't burn even after an hour of direct flame, which is kind of nice to have. So that's the cabin. Everything is these pipes and tubes, all of these are the same as the original. There is steel in important places. Here's a stainless steel tubes there. All the engine mounts is steel. And there's this big tube here is a double steel tube that's critical because the struts hook to it, the landing gear hooks to it, cabin hooks to it, everything hooks to it. The gas tanks, fuel tanks are back here. They sit on these bars. These bars have been reinforced. Actually, there's double bars now to hold the fuel. This has a manual flaps. As you can see, we've been looking at the landing gear. The landing gear is massive. This is the landing gear. It's a heavy, thick aluminum piece that is integrated into the body, and it comes down here to a very solid tires and wheels. So the tires are they're pretty cheap. They're barely big enough to hold the airplane in terms of weight limits, and but they are rated for speed. It's just on a paved runway, these tires aren't going to last very long at all. So they'll need to be replaced at some point. Well, they'll just wear. They will wear. But the landing gear, very robust landing gear. You can see here the structure that holds the landing gear in place and connects it to this main bar. There's an internal drag strut or drag link which prevents the landing gear from twisting on a hard landing. As you can see, there are very few tubes. This is really a simple application of structure. I mean, everything is very simplified. Part of that comes from internal cable bracing. And cable bracing is, you see that in a lot of, it's a tried and true, trusted method to reinforce structure used in airplanes in the 20s and 30s. The old Skyrangers, the originals, classic versions, had 4 cables in the empennage or the tail section. The new one has 12 cables. This is very, very rugged and sturdy and rigid. I don't know if rigid is a good thing to have. Sometimes it's good to bend, but this is just very solid, really, and it's a very light way to reinforce a structure. Nothing is stronger as a structure than a column under compression. Well, I wouldn't say nothing, but it's a type of structure which is very solid. So there are turnbuckles at the top. That's it. Basically, to get it solid and straight and square, you need to work with twisting the cables to tighten them. That was a challenge, but once it's done, it's done. The fiberglass provides no structural support. The fiberglass is just there to guide air around it so it flows through the atmosphere as clean as possible. The fiberglass pieces come in 2 parts. They're held together with little plastic nuts that are placed along the entire length of the empennage. On the classics, this was of course fabric, and it would just be really rough, especially through this transition areas. As you can see, this is, instead of being these flat panels that the fabric has, these are nice rounded structures which give it good aerodynamic. In the back, these vertical stabilized, horizontal stable rudder elevator, they're exactly the same dimensions, exactly the same. I measured them. There is no change to that, so I'm hoping that that will mean that it will handle as nice as the original. A couple of changes that happened, this piece here which connects the 2 elevators, this has been beefed up, made a lot more solid, and it's just a lot heavier duty structure. The other thing that we're seeing is there is a rudder horn, and the horn comes all the way back to the back side of the rudder. And the old one was just a lot lighter version of that. Still uses the same flying cables. That's the pre-flight. You want a nice upright bass. Boom, boom, boom. That's a good sound. Plain old elevator trim. Nothing new there. They now have it's a doubled, so this is the rudder, and the rudder also has another set of cables that run inside the fuselage to a bungee system, which as you pull on one side, it provides pressure and it kind of pulls it back into place. In the original, there was nothing on the rudders to bring you back to straight, so you literally had to feel it. But like in a GA plane, there are large springs on the rudder pedals that always bring it back to square. Now with this bungee system, that will pull the rudder back to square, back to straight. I'm not sure if I like that. I like the concept of being able to feel the wind. It's so light, the control surface, that you can literally feel when on the original, the classic, you can feel when the rudder is touching wind, when you're feeling that. And now you're going to be fighting against it's a small bungee, but maybe that'll help people. Maybe they'll think that is better. The other big improvement that's been made is in the cabin. This is all a Lexan window. They lowered this tube. This tube used to be hooked here and then went straight back. They lowered this, and now this gives you a window to the back, so you can, from the pilot's seat, you can look all the way around the aircraft, and a nice big window here so that you can see traffic to the right or to the left. Also in the cabin, this tube, in the original, this was a vertical tube, and it actually came from in front of this tube straight down. So what happens is it's moving the tube forward, makes it easier to swing your feet in and out, and it gives you more aerodynamic. So on the original, the windshield went up like this and back. This one, the windshield's going to go more straight. It just curves right over the front of this front spar. So that's another, we don't see the Lexan's not in there, but that's what's going to happen. They've elongated the nose, moved it out, and then your windshield will go at a greater angle. So you can see from sitting in the pilot's seat, you can see all the way around backwards. You can actually look, which is a really nice safety feature. I think that's pretty cool. A cool safety feature is you can actually see inside the wing, and you can see there are these little insulation foam support blocks which hold the wing into position. Typically what you have in the original ones, the lower rib will kind of bend up with the pressure. So now this holds the wing more straight, flat. That may also provide some more, make it more consistent in terms of flying and reduce drag. But it's nice to be able to do a pre-flight and check all of your connections, just really visually right off the bat. Yeah, you'll notice a lot of the bolts are not tightened yet. On this, they all use European, all the hardware is European, so it's not AN hardware. And it's not a hardened hardware, it's a rated 8.8, so it's a mild bolts and nuts. They're all nylock nuts, and also the specs are to use red Loctite on each one, on each nut that goes in there. So it's what people talk about, belts and suspenders. That's a good thing. The other improvement that they've done is aerodynamics. So in the older versions, this would just be kind of hanging out, and now there's a cover for this here. There's also a cover that goes on here which kind of cleans this up and cleans up that joint. On top of the tail is another aerodynamic extension, and it's about maybe 12 inches, 10 inches tall, and that because it's in the clean air, you get a lot of vertical stability from that instead of having something really big and hanging out. So it's very light, very simple. A lot of simple stuff in this. The gap seals are super simple. They're just extra fabric that's been folded over and then sewn together. So the gap seal is supposed to provide a seal so that air doesn't rush through. The same with the gap seals on the flaps and the ailerons, and the rudder uses the same methodology. I think it gets a little bit, once I get some paint on it and get it adjusted, it will be a little bit more rigid and provide a better gap seal, but it's not perfect. There are some other manufacturers that I've liked their method of gap sealing better than others, but this is what it is. So this is the 2024 Skyranger kit. In the middle, this reflects about 140 hours of work. It's a really quick build. You can get a lot done. The engine is mounted, but it's not plumbed or wired or anything like that. The next step is after the cowling is adjusted. So basically what happens is you You build the cowlings, this part, the bottom of the lower cowling, put it all together, drill it, mount it all, make it all square, and then adjust this, put on your spacer, your prop, and your spinner, and then you can adjust the cowling right or left, up or down, and then attach it. It gets attached to this vertical tube, and then under here to the firewall. So it's an interesting way of building it, but that's where the adjustment point, and then you cut off where the excess is. Most of the holes are drilled. You just put in the bolts. Most of the bolts come already attached, but you got to double check every one of those. I have had so far 9 bolts so far that have been too short, where I had to get another bolt a little bit longer, or use another bolt that was not in the proper length and just reuse it. I've had a couple of missing parts. Two of these clips that hold it on were missing. Three were missing. I had to go to the hardware store and buy a separate one. Although I have found now on Amazon, and I bought a replacement kit of those clips that they look identical. I'll wait and see when I get them. But I've had a couple of things that weren't here that should have been here. The build manual is mostly correct. It's all digital online on the UK Skyranger site. They are the official manufacturer distributor, and there's a dealer in the US, Skyranger USA. But the manual has been, they make continuous improvements. So what happens is the manual is probably the last thing to get updated. So there's some things in the manual that are irrelevant, or they don't show the exact thing, or they don't have the instructions for exactly what we have in place on this particular aircraft. So those are what I've observed so far. It's still a really, really good airplane. The kit is a very high quality airplane at a reasonable price. When you look at the competition, and the competition is things like Sonics, Rands, Zenith, Kitfox, this is $10,000 to $20,000 to $25,000 less expensive for planes that have equal performance in terms of weight carrying, speed, stall speed, when you look at them really critically. The unknown is really what happens if there is no dealer. When you look at the manufacturers like Vans, Zenith, Sonics, they have such a good support network for builders. There's really not a lot of network for builders for the Skyranger. There are 1,600 of these flying around the world. They're bigger in Europe, in England, and other parts of the country than they are here in the United States. So that's one of the negatives is are there resources available for you? It's a very simple build. It's a high quality, high performance build. It just looks right. It looks like a very simple, straightforward, not a complex aircraft, and it's that way to build. It's very simple. Follow the instructions. So that's basically it. We'll end here. Maybe I'll do another one when it's ready to be finished, and right before our flight, and do some first flight testing. But I think it should be pretty simple. I've got the original Classic, which I have over 1,400 hours on the original. That's why I bought this one, because it flies so very well, does everything that I wanted it to do. So that's the end of this video. Look for the next one.